Iris woke up from the cave of the ghost spider with blank memories. Without knowing her background, she discovered that as long as she approached Inuyasha and her companions, she could trigger a magical barrage of predictions about the future. So she began her daily routine of pretending to be a weak chicken with green tea. At first, she thought she was reincarnated as a strand of resentment from Kikyu. Later on, he discovered that he was actually from the same origin as Nara. But in fact, this is not her true background. On the way of searching for memories, Iris met her true companions. I also met Kikyu, who was compassionate and holy, but had a tragic fate. She even met someone she couldn't forget. She never imagined that a cold mountain like Sashimaru would one day be in uproar for her. Under the beautiful illusion, the unknown conspiracy of the four-soul jade is still ongoing. Do you think making the only right wish can make it disappear? No. The fact is far from so simple. Fate seemed to have played a huge joke on her. Chapter 1. The Attack of the Hundred-Legged Demon Woman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What are you still dawdling on? Let's go. Iris, let's go save Govi quickly. Iris's lifeless gaze lingered on the pile of shattered pottery figurine fragments at his feet, stunned and lost in thought. One line after another, only she could see the subtitles floating before her eyes, rolling non-stop. If she were from Blue Star, she would definitely be able to recognize these scrolling subtitles as bullet comments at a glance. Among the many flowing contents, her gaze swept over one of the names. Just at this glance, she was surrounded by an inexplicable sense of suffocation that followed. Platycodon grandiflorus. I'll be seeing Kikyu soon, so excited. The surviving Kikyu is just a doll carrying resentment. She just slept for a while, and when she woke up, her former lover no longer belonged to her. Kikyu's time stopped at the moment when he mistakenly thought he was betrayed 50 years ago. Don't be in a daze, follow up quickly. On Inuyasha's shoulder, he carried broken iron teeth that had not yet been relieved of their changes, and the blade was still stained with some clay. On his other shoulder, Chibao was waving his hand towards Iris, signaling that she should follow up quickly. For some reason, as she looked at Inuyasha in front of her, Iris's heart began to tremble inexplicably. Even the right shoulder is feeling a faint pain. A kind of extreme attachment and resentment filled her heart, full of contradictions. Here we are. Iris suppressed the strange feeling in her heart and lowered her gaze to once again glance at the pottery fragments at her feet. Finally, she walked towards Inuyasha and Chibao. Her steps were slightly disorganized, and the fragments of the terracotta figurines that were stepped on under her feet shattered into pieces. Just like her current state of mind, chaotic and disorganized. There are too many explosive messages in this barrage. Will Kikyu really come back to life? If she sees Kikyu, can she really unlock her dusty memories? In front of me was a towering mountain peak, shrouded in clouds and mist, making it impossible to see the full view of the mountain. The ghost girl Li Tao, who stole the spirit bones of Kikyu, is right here. Even recently, even Govi was abducted by her. Terracotta figurines, the spirit bones of Platycodon, Govi. The answer is about to come out. And Maple Grandma also said that they might meet with Kikyu soon. A few months ago, things had not yet escalated into the irreversible situation they are now. A few months ago. When Iris opened her eyes, she found herself lying in a dark cave. At this moment, her brain was blank, staring blankly at the pitch-black and empty surroundings. She seemed to have been asleep for a long time. Those memories before falling asleep seem to be locked. No matter how hard you try, they cannot be opened. Iris propped up her body and bent her legs, half sitting on the slightly damp ground, frowning tightly and muttering to herself. Who am I? The cave is filled with extremely strong evil energy. Just getting close, ordinary people will be instantly eroded by evil energy, leaving only a dense white bone. But this evil energy did not cause any substantial damage to the Iris inside. It's better to say that these evil spirits cannot get close to her at all. Due to the dark and humid cave, coupled with the prolonged absence of light, the already cramped space was filled with a dull and moldy smell. This made the iris's heart also become sluggish. This has led to the brain, which was already desperately searching for information about its own memory, becoming increasingly lethargic. Helpless, she could only walk out of the dark and damp cave. As soon as she left the cave, the faint fragrance of flowers and the fresh scent of grass after the rain lingered in her nose. Her restless and confused mood gradually calmed down, invisibly soothing her confusion and unease towards the unknown. Just the dazzling strong sunlight caused a brief blindness in the eyes that had been in darkness for a long time. Iris instinctively raised her hand and covered her eyes, trying to block out the glaring light. Saw saw. A faint sound penetrated her ears from far to near. Approaching her was not just a faint sound, but also a demonic aura filled with fresh blood smell. The 100-legged witch pressed tightly against the ground, using the wild grass as a cover, quietly and swiftly approached the iris. Not long ago, the 100-legged demon woman was torn into countless pieces of meat by Inuyasha's soul-wrestling iron claw and thrown into the well of bones. She was supposed to end her life as a dragon trap with a boxed meal. But when she was once again abandoned in the bone-eating well, she suddenly felt a powerful force pouring into her shattered limbs. Just like when I first met Govi. So her torn body miraculously reunited again. The 100-legged witch ate a lot of humans and livestock along the way, which barely supported her heavily injured body to reach the cave where the iris was located. She could clearly feel that the powerful force that brought her back to life in the bone-eating well came from the girl in front of her. After eating you, I can regain my body. I want to shatter that half-demon into pieces. The sound emitted from the throat of a 100-foot witch was as sharp and piercing as nails scratching an iron plate. She had a fierce expression on her face, her eyes bulging, her mouth wide open, and she surged out of the wild grass, her huge body blocking the sun and charging straight towards the iris standing at the entrance of the cave. As the sharp teeth of the 100-legged witch approached the slender and smooth neck of the iris in an instant. That powerful bite force can make her stand out in the next second. But the iris seemed to feel nothing, still blocking its eyes with one hand and isolating itself from the dazzling sunlight. The shadow cast by the massive body of the 100-legged witch happened to envelop the slender figure of the iris. Iris looked coldly at the 100-legged witch's bony yet incredibly massive body within reach, not only without any fear, but still standing still in place, motionless like a mountain. The 100-legged demon woman thought that Iris had been scared silly by herself and couldn't even muster the courage to escape. She was in a happy mood and wanted to bite off Iris's neck in one bite, in order to restore her demonic power and flesh, and then seek revenge on that half-demon boy. Loud noise. However, at this critical moment, a hand that was so fast that only remnants remained easily crushed the chin of a 100-foot witch in an instant. For a moment, blood was dripping profusely, and flesh and blood were flying everywhere. Iris still looked straight ahead with a lazy posture. At this moment, she seemed to have adapted to the dazzling sunlight, her hands slowly hanging down on her face, revealing a cold and gorgeous face. After spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, she turned her eyes and looked diagonally at the face that was only half of her grasp, curling the corners of her mouth. Who did you just say you were going to eat? The once fierce face of the 100-legged witch became even more twisted due to intense pain, and her crimson eyes were filled with fear. Help! Let go! Vague words came intermittently from the throat of the 100-legged witch, her pupils trembling violently like an earthquake. Chapter 2. Digging and burying the earth, friends and family cry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Because it was only at this moment that she finally felt the terrifying demonic power from the iris. This woman is definitely the most powerful existence she has ever seen. It seemed uninteresting, and before the 100-legged demon woman could speak again, Iris pinched the hand of the 100-legged demon woman's half-face and slowly tightened it. The body of a 100-legged witch is like a loach soaked in salt water, struggling to survive and flapping in mid-air. She also tried to use her thick body to smash the seemingly delicate iris, hoping to crush it into minced meat. But before approaching the iris, her body was like being cut by a sharp blade, instantly shattering into countless pieces of flesh. Beside Iris, there seemed to be invisible walls of incredibly sharp knives, which would be sliced into pieces just as they approached. The 100-legged witch screamed loudly in pain, even the air shook. Bang! In the end, the ground was shattered in red, white, and white. The noisy cries in my ears suddenly came to an end. The earth returned to tranquility, with only the rustling of weeds in the breeze. Iris disdainfully shook her hand stained with blood. The hand that had just crushed the head of a 100-foot witch lifted a white mist. The mist dissipated, and her hands were as smooth and tender as ever, without any hint of bloody smell. Iris looked down at the fragmented body of the 100-legged witch and spoke lightly, miscellaneous. At this moment, except for the meat pieces falling from the entrance of the mountain and the eyeballs of the 100-legged witch rolling to the ground by the Iris feet. The surroundings are so quiet that only the faint sound of wind blowing weeds remains, making people feel very peaceful inside. But the wreckage of the 100-legged witch ignited the inexplicable sense of familiarity in her blood. Lifting his hand, he bent his jade-white fingers, and the pleasure of killing that came from there made Iris involuntarily curl its lips. It's really enjoyable. The gentle breeze brushed past, and for some reason, her heart began to throb inexplicably in a certain direction. The lock that blocks memories seems to be showing signs of loosening. Is that a human village? Iris gazes into the distance, its translucent amethyst-like eyes lit up, shining with twinkling stars. The direction that attracted her has now raised a curl of cooking smoke. She is about to walk in that direction. Maybe I can retrieve my lost memories in that human village. But the slight tingling pain on her cheek stopped her. The footsteps that had just been lifted stopped like this. A very sharp, thin thread cut through her cheek. The bright red blood dripped down the thin thread onto the ground and quickly disappeared into the soil, losing its trace. Just now, my attention was drawn to the direction of the human village, but I didn't notice the sharp and fine lines within reach. At this moment, Iris finally saw clearly that her surroundings were already covered in a dense network of laws. Is this hair? Under the sunshine, the crisscrossing magic net envelopes the iris layer by layer, shimmering with a faint silver light, like a cage. If she doesn't dispose of these hair, she won't be able to move a single bit, let alone go to the human village that she cares about. At the thought of this, Iris's gaze towards her hair inexplicably became displeased. She raised her hand and placed her index finger on one of the strands of hair, exerting a slight force. The white and tender fingertips were immediately cut open, and the red blood was hidden in the hair, as if given life to swim towards the direction of the hair. At the same time, the retro hairpin, who was lying coquettishly inside the huge serve waiting for the prey to come to her door, suddenly contracted its pupils. Because she felt a burning sensation from her fingers. The strands of hair that extended from her fingers also drooped down at the same time, as if she had lost her life. With a painful moan of gritting her teeth, her hand was swiftly cut off by the hair with iris blood, rolling down to her feet. Who is it? Jielua's broken wrist was quickly pulled back by his hair, and then a large number of hair bundles were ejected towards the direction of the iris. But there is no trace of the iris there anymore. He threw an empty knot and squeezed the skull in his hand. Her sturdy skull was easily crushed into pieces by her. After I get this beautiful silver hair, I'll go find you to settle the accounts. Jielua cast a cold gaze towards the direction where Iris had just been. But when my gaze turned to the silver hair entwined between my fingers, it suddenly softened. But in reality, it is still crazy and bloodthirsty. That's the hair of Inuyasha that she accidentally caught. Iris walked towards the village. As I passed through the dense forest, a faint sound of breathing could be faintly heard beneath the layers of withered leaves. And it was also at this moment that for the first time, barrage after barrage appeared in front of Iris. What is this? Iris raised her hand and waved the flowing subtitles. Without a doubt, her hand went straight through them. Digging and burying, relatives and friends cry. Grandma Fong. I think I can still save some. Maple. This name seems a bit familiar. Iris crouched where the sound of breathing came from and reached out to brush away the layer of dead leaves on the surface. A face full of grooves and weathered weather suddenly appeared before her eyes. This face is somewhat familiar, but it seems that it shouldn't look like this. Inuyasha, is that you? Maple's grandmother's voice sounded a bit weak, and she propped up her spirits and opened her eyes. A strange and beautiful face collided with her eyes. Iris looked down calmly at Maple Granny, who was buried in the pit covered in soil. Ignoring her question, she spoke faintly, "Do you know me?" When she first saw Maple Granny buried in the pit, a faint image of a little girl's face came to her mind. That little girl kept calling her sister. Although it doesn't look similar to the Maple Grandma in front of her, Iris just thinks they are the same person. The white witch costume on Grandma Feng's shoulder oozed bloodstains, and a faint smell of blood drifted into the nose of Iris. Maple Granny, who was originally somewhat dazed, widened her murky old eyes and exclaimed in surprise when she saw the Iris. Kikyu's sister. Platycodon grandiflorus. When hearing these two words, for some reason, the Iris's heart began to beat uncontrollably and violently. A wonderful emotion surged into her heart. That's fear. And excitement. Platycodon grandiflorus. Why does she have such a violent reaction to a name she hears for the first time? She had never even seen that unfamiliar woman named Kikyu. Sorry, I got the wrong person, hiss. The shock on Grandma Feng's face, which had come to her senses, gradually faded away as she was excited and pulled the wound on her shoulder, causing her eyes to turn black with pain. She's really dazed with old age. Perhaps it was due to excessive longing for Kikyu's sister, coupled with the recent encounter with Govi, that I mistakenly identified this unfamiliar woman in front of me who bears no resemblance to Kikyu. Who is Kikyu? Chapter 3. First meeting with Govi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Iris stared at Maple Granny's face for an instant, and unconsciously, even her body trembled slightly. That is an emotion that comes from within. Since she heard the name Kikyu, her once calm heart like a stagnant pool suddenly surged with waves of water. Now she has only one idea, which is to figure out who this woman named Kikyu is. When I heard the name Kikyu, those blocked memories suddenly exploded, as if they were about to break through the lock at any moment. Platycodon. Kikyu. Iris has already started to get excited. Because she feels like she will soon know who she is. Grandma Fong licked her dry lips and took a long sigh of relief. Are you a child from the neighboring village? It's very dangerous here. Hurry up and leave this place. If nothing unexpected happens, Inuyasha should have brought Govi back to the Warring States period by now, and the two are already working together to deal with the monster Jelua. Even so, this place is still very dangerous, so Fong Lao Lao advised. But Iris, as if she hadn't heard Maple's advice to leave this dangerous place quickly, still stared closely at Maple's eyes and said, "Who is she?" Under a strong sense of oppression, Grandma Fong instinctively swallowed and said, "She is my sister, a witch with very strong spiritual power." Witches. Iris murmured these two words in her mouth, but before she could think it over, a loud noise came from not far away, and her attention was also drawn away. You leave here quickly, the monster at manipulates hair should be over there. Fong Lao Lao's eager voice rang out again, but her eyes were focused on the place where the loud noise came from, with an anxious and serious expression. Iris raised her hand to touch her face, which had been scratched by her hair, and smiled softly. The originally slender wound is now gone, leaving only smooth and fair skin. A monster manipulating hair. She happened to have some conflicts with that monster. I'll come find you again. After leaving this sentence, Iris walked towards the direction that made a loud noise, and its figure quickly disappeared into the darkness. Rather than retrieving lost memories, she now wants to find the person who cut her face and settle the accounts. Even Iris herself didn't know that deep down in her heart, she was afraid that the lost memory would be retrieved, so she turned around to find Jelua Maple Grandma is at a loss. What is going on with this girl who suddenly appears and disappears? I just mistook her for Sister Kikyu, just because I felt a faint spiritual power in her that was extremely similar to Sister Kikyu. Is she also a witch? In the end, Grandma Fong seemed to suddenly think of something and looked towards the direction where Iris had left, slowly speaking with a sense of disappointment. Can you dig me out first? The Iris quickly arrived at the place where hair was scattered all over the ground. No need to guess, this must be Jelua's lair. On the mountain of human skulls, a huge black serve hangs in mid-air, in stark contrast to the silver moon hanging in mid-air. One is chilling and uncomfortable, while the other is cold and pure. Even from a long distance, the Iris can still smell the foul smell of decay mixed in the air, which is nauseating. On the small mountain piled up with bones, Inuyasha had already become entangled with Jelua. The current situation seems to be dominated by Jelua. Inuyasha's fire rat fur draped over Govi, rescuing her from crisis after crisis. But by comparison, Inuyasha's situation is much worse. Without the protection of the fire rat fur, Inuyasha's body was already covered with wounds of all sizes, and deep red blood seeped through his white inner garment, appearing very frightening. It was also at this time that Iris first saw Inuyasha. This half-demon boy, like Maple Granny who had just been buried in the soil, gave her a strange feeling of familiarity. After seeing the face of Inuyasha clearly, a memory seemed to flash quickly in her mind. But that memory disappeared too quickly, and the Iris disappeared without a trace before it could be seen clearly. Only the fleeting memories in my heart leave a sense of emptiness. Because Govi was facing away from the Iris, she didn't see her clearly. But just the breath and spiritual power felt from Govi's back to her was enough to make her heart suddenly tighten. At this moment, Iris's eyes lit up and the scrolling subtitles appeared again. Inch strength, open your head. Secret technique. Lift up your skull. Nifa Jelua. I cracked it, and you guys. When these inexplicable words appeared in front of Iris, a magical scene occurred. Govi was holding an arrow tightly in her hand, using all her strength to grit her teeth and desperately smash it towards a red skull. The direction of the matter seems to be following the rolling subtitles in front of us, chong, chong, chong. The sound of sharp arrows hitting the hard bones of the heavenly spirit kept coming from my ears, causing teeth to ache and scalp to tingle. And the sexy monster Jia Luo, who originally had a winning face and kept saying that he was immortal, showed signs of cracking on his arrogant and disdainful smile, becoming terrifying. You woman, I must kill you. Watching his true body being attacked, Jelua immediately turned his short blade towards the silver dog Yiksha and used his hair to control it, heading straight towards Govi's heart. Fire rat fur is absolutely unable to withstand a blow of Jelua's anger. The red skull remained motionless, without even a crack appearing. The obvious result is that Govi will be killed by the short blade manipulated by Jelua piercing through his heart. Iris didn't really care about this outcome and would just watch with a cold eye. Because in her eyes, anyone's life is like an ant, not worth caring about at all. But her body started to move before thinking. As Govi vigorously smashed the arrow in his hand towards the red skull, Iris also raised his hand and shook it in the void of the skull. Amethyst-like eyes shimmered with colors, and a cold light suddenly appeared. At the critical moment, it seemed that the arrow in Govi's hand pierced through the red skull. In fact, before the arrow touched the red skull, it was already torn apart by the grip of the Iris's void. In an instant, a strong light that could illuminate the night into day burst out from a red comb inside the skull. The short blade that was pressing against Govi's heart stopped just a stone's throw away from her, and then fell straight to the ground, making a resounding crisp sound. The defeat was instantly reversed, and the sexy female demon Jia Luo turned into a burst of flying ash, dissipating in the night breeze with a strong sense of unwillingness. Chapter 4. My name is Nobunaga. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The battle ended, and everyone present, including Govi herself, believed that she had smashed the Red Skull and destroyed Jielua's true body. But what about the facts? Not to mention the skull of a monster, even a human skull is not as hard as a 15-year-old girl can break in a short period of time. The barrage in front of me is still rolling. Jia Luo's body turned into ashes and scattered with the wind, leaving only his clothes scattered in mid-air. Successfully completed the dungeon, Govi's experience has been enhanced. Obtained spoils of war, a set of fashion. Lost equipment, Govi, pick it up and replace it. True head popping. The names appearing in the barrage did not give her any more familiarity. Iris frowned and waved her hand again. Without exception, her hand passed through the floating barrage in front of her. But the spiritual power felt from the girl named Govi made her very concerned, although it was very weak. At this moment, Govi also happened to turn around. When she saw Govi's appearance clearly, another memory flashed through Iris's mind, so fast that she couldn't even catch a trace. When she regained her senses, the two people who had been fighting against the reverse demon Jielua on the mountain of corpses that had recently piled up were nowhere to be seen. Govi, Platycodon. Iris murmured their names in her mouth. For some reason, in my mind, Govi's face and Kikyu's name actually overlapped. It's becoming increasingly nonsensical. The wind at night is extremely cold. Iris stood at the place where Govi had just shattered the reverse hair knot, feeling Govi's remaining spiritual power and wanting to recall something. But ultimately, it was in vain. Suddenly, a fierce wind struck, and the long hair of Iris was rudely blown up, fluttering in a disorderly manner. The red comb under my feet, which was originally shattered by Govi, mysteriously and slowly repaired itself again. That despicable woman dared to destroy my body. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the wind, there was Jielua's furious voice, as if the next second was about to skin and drink blood. Jielua's body, which had just turned into flying ash, gradually gathered in the wind. As long as her body was repaired, she could come back to life again. The vitality of monsters is so unreasonable and powerful. Oh, your hair is pretty good. Jielua watched as the Iris's long black hair flickered with a faint radiance under the cold moonlight, so he extended his small tongue to lick his red lips, and the corners of his mouth curved cruelly. When the collection is ready. As she spoke, she was about to lift the iris and spread it out in her palm, gently rubbing it. But is this what she can imagine? I advise you not to touch it. Iris glanced coldly at the unfinished knot. Her mind is now mixed with various messy thoughts, unable to sort out any clues, like a ball of yarn that cannot be found. So she's in a very bad, especially bad, invincible mood now. With just a fleeting glance, Jielua felt like his whole body was covered in cold ice, almost frozen in place. Her first reaction was that the woman in front of her was very strong. This is the first time she has encountered such a powerful demon power. If she gets annoyed, I'm afraid I really have to admit it here today. Jia Luo's hand suddenly withdrew as if electrocuted, and his face turned pale as he took a few steps back. Speaking of which, you manipulated these hair, right? Iris touched her smooth and fair cheeks, and lowered her gaze like an ant, looking at Jielua's body. This is not a question, but an affirmation. An ominous feeling rose from Jielua's heart. Her face changed dramatically. Upon hearing the words, she turned around and was about to run away, but she forgot that her true body was still lying quietly at the feet of the iris. Click. As soon as Iris lifted its feet, it stepped on the red comb lying quietly at its feet and ran over it. The red comb shattered in response. The mournful cry of Jia Luo echoed through the dense forest, startling the wild sparrows that inhabit the forest. This time, The red comb no longer had demonic power to repair itself, and Gielua was completely wiped out. Night, returned to tranquility once again. Iris looked up at the bright moon hanging in the sky, with countless thoughts. Kikyu, Govi, what connection will these two people have with themselves? However, what really caught her attention the most were the rolling subtitles that would suddenly appear in front of her at some point. If she comes from Blue Star, she would definitely recognize it as a barrage at a glance. Unfortunately, she is not. The subtitles that suddenly appeared in front of me seemed to foreshadow what was about to happen in the future. To confirm its hypothesis, Iris has observed and had contact with many people during this period. But those subtitles that could predict the future never appeared again. Just like everything from beginning to end was her own illusion, until she met Inuyasha and Govi again. Appearing, the ancestor of Hojo classmate. Nobunaga. This Nobunaga is not the other Nobunaga. Go away, please don't get excited, even the two dogs are jealous. Yo yo yo, who should I show or Guzzi with a black face? The iris restrained its own breath from beginning to end, keeping a distance from the two and following behind them, so it was not detected. After these barrage appeared, a slightly dull and delicate young man began to introduce himself. My name is Nobunaga. Here we go again. Subtitles that can predict the future. From then on, Iris finally made up its mind. How can we get close to them? The iris leaned against a thick branch, perfectly hiding its figure in the lush shade of the trees. Hidden under the shade of the trees, his eyes were like amethysts, revealing the three people, a monkey, and a flea under his feet. To get close to Inuyasha and his team who can trigger subtitles to predict the future, first of all, they need to hide their demonic power to make themselves appear less powerful and outrageous. Alas, being too powerful is really a very distressing thing. There is a contradiction between the extremely powerful demonic power and some weak spiritual power on the body of the iris. Just like the black and white on the Tai Chi diagram. Compared to spiritual power, her demonic power is even stronger. And that spiritual power feels very similar to the spiritual power on Govi. The reason behind this is not even clear to her. The reason why I chose to hide my demonic power and make myself look weak is to smoothly integrate into the team of Inuyasha and Govi, and uncover my dusty memories. No one is willing to live a life without knowing their background. Compared to very powerful strangers, people are more likely to accept people who are weaker than themselves. But perfectly hiding the demonic aura is not a simple matter to talk about. Although Iris has now hidden its own aura, following behind Inuyasha and Govi unnoticed, it has always kept a distance from them before being detected. Chapter 5. Nausea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Once in contact with them, her powerful demonic power will be detected. Just as she was pondering how to hide her demonic aura, the shadow of the non-demon wall suddenly appeared in her mind. It seems that she can recall everything except for her own memories. Iris reluctantly tugged at the corner of her mouth. The gentle breeze brushed by, and the shadows of the trees swayed. The place where the iris was located a second ago is now empty. The only evidence that can prove her past existence is probably the lingering warmth on the tree trunk that has not yet dissipated. At present, her goal is only one, which is not to be a demon wall. After she regained the non-demon wall and returned, it was completely dark. And Inuyasha and Govi, along with Nobunaga, have successfully entered the castle and are planning to rescue Princess Luji. Perhaps we need to take the opportunity to infiltrate this team, and now is the best time. After occupying the body of the city lord, the 99 toad captured many girls and sealed them inside the toad eggs it created. When the souls of the girls are successfully stripped away, it will swallow them into its belly. Iris planned to disguise herself as one of the captured girls, but when she looked at the toad eggs that occasionally emitted a foul odor, her expression was like constipation nauseous. Those sticky and green-looking liquids will become nightmares she never wants to mention again. On the other side, Govi and Nobunaga successfully found Princess Luki in the entire castle, which was in a coma. Just as a few people were preparing to retreat, the 9 toads blocked their retreat. The 9 toads saw that they were going to take Princess Luigi away. In a fit of anger, they seriously injured Nobunaga and kidnapped Princess Luigi. Princess Luigi's screams of fear echoed throughout the silent castle. Animals all have an instinctive homing behavior. The 9 toads captured Princess Luigi back to their nest where they stored the girl's soul. In order to keep Princess Luigi and herself together forever, the 9 toads decided to eat her soul and merge her with themselves. Princess Luigi, so we can be together forever. The JoJo toad's huge eyes stared at Princess Luigi, whose face was frozen with fear, inside the egg, showing a look of obsession. Princess Luigi. Who wants to be with you forever? Iris watched with her own eyes how the 9 toads spit out their eggs, and then put Princess Luigi inside. She gave the disgusting level of the scene a perfect score. As soon as I thought that I would also be put inside later, my stomach juice couldn't help but churn. Nauseous, however, there is no other way. If you miss this opportunity, the next time may be a monkey year. The iris wrinkled its erect Cheong nose, and its tightly furrowed brow could even trap a mosquito, but it still seized the opportunity to dodge and teleport behind the 99 toad. It's really disgusting. Who is it? The 9 toads quickly turned around, looking wary at the person who appeared behind them at an unknown time. The cold sweat had already soaked the clothes on their back. But after seeing the person's face clearly, the toad's face was only filled with amazement and obsession. What a beautiful human, even more beautiful than my Princess Luigi. Why does the 99 toad mistake the iris for a human? It is precisely because the non-demon wall has played a role in perfectly hiding her powerful demonic energy, leaving only a trace of almost negligible spiritual power that can be detected. The countless protruding flesh balls on the body of the 99 toad are densely packed with its exposed skin in the air, and there is always a transparent viscous liquid hanging on its rough and uneven skin. Being stared at by such a disgusting toad monster with an infatuated expression, Iris swept over without saying a word. At the strength of her body at this moment, with just a whip of her leg, the 99 toad could ascend directly to the sky in place. The sound of Inuyasha's footsteps was already within reach, and Iris could only forcefully retract its long legs, which were about to kick the 99 toad away. The plan must not be broken, otherwise we cannot approach Inuyasha and Govi. The 9 toads also regained a toad's life through this. She didn't have any extra time to delay any longer with the infatuated and disgusting toad in front of her. If the 99 toad knew how the 100-legged witch died, give it 10,000 courage and it wouldn't dare to offend the iris. Put me in an egg. A red light flashed through the eyes of Iris and JoJo Toad as they gazed at each other. The protruding eyes of the 9 toad suddenly lost focus, shining like a marionette on the iris's words, and putting her and Princess Luigi inside the toad's egg. After executing the command of the iris, the lifeless eyes of the 99 toad regained their radiance. It held the egg containing Princess Luigi and raised one hand to touch its bald forehead. Its foolish big face showed a hint of doubt. Did I just do something? It seems to vaguely remember a beautiful human woman who was just here, but there is no trace of anyone else here besides it. It's so disgusting. Iris suppressed her goosebumps and gritted her scalp as she watched Inuyasha break through the toad eggs created by the 99 toads. Fortunately, she finally caught up and looked no different from the girls who were caught and trapped inside the toad eggs. Why is the call of this toad like, bah? It's so funny. Shouldn't it be a quack? How could it be a bah? Laughing makes my stomach ache, ha ha ha. The mockery in the barrage today is almost disturbing her eyes. But she also successfully verified one thing, which is, as long as there are events related to Inuyasha and Govi, those flowing subtitles that only she can see will appear. So, Inuyasha and Govi are currently the switches that trigger predicting future subtitles. However, these subtitles are not entirely about predicting the future. For example, now what should I do? I actually think this toad spirit is a bit cute. Look at those clear and slightly foolish big eyes. That one upstairs, it's not big eyes, it's hyperthyroidism. Didn't you see that the eyeballs were almost flying out? ABA ABA ABA. Dot. Iris curled up in its egg, watching everything happening outside, trying to ignore the arrogant laughter in the barrage. Indeed, human joys and sorrows are not interconnected. But even so, everything that happened next was still happening gradually following the trend of flowing subtitles. Inuyasha successfully defeated the 99 toads and rescued the gentle city lord. Next, they also rescued the young girls who were imprisoned by the 99 toads inside their eggs. Of course, it also includes Iris. If Iris's resentment could condense into substance, the entire castle would probably have been filled with her resentment by now. She didn't expect Inuyasha to defeat Jojo Toad with so much effort and time. Chapter 6. Yes, I am green tea. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If it were her, by the time the 99 toads used the gentle city lord to deceive everyone, it had already died completely. Including the gentle lord who was occupying his body. She doesn't care what's good or bad, as long as she gets in front of her and blocks her from achieving her goals, she will remove them without blinking her eyes. In this regard, there is a half-demon who only knows how to use malicious means that is very similar to her. Govi used an arrow to cut through the egg that imprisoned the iris, and the iris pretended to be a drowning person and was finally rescued from the deep sea. She coughed fiercely with a pale face, looking extremely painful. In order to increase credibility, Iris even choked on the entire set of acting. Are you okay? A gentle voice of concern came from above. Iris pretended to be weak and leaned against Govi's half-kneeling thigh, looking a bit suffocating. Govi saw the girl leaning on her lap with a pale face like paper. A pair of amethyst-like clear big eyes were wet, sobbing softly, and I still felt pity when I saw them. At that moment, he gently patted her back with heartache, giving her a smooth breath. The cough of the iris finally subsided. Something's up. Very busy. Iris suddenly regrets why she chose to approach Govi and Inuyasha in this way. In order to make herself look like a human girl caught and imprisoned in an egg by a 99 toad, she actually choked on a few mouthfuls of liquid from the egg. Ouch. She is really feeling uncomfortable now. I feel so uncomfortable that I wish I could take out my stomach and wash it again. It's so scary. That toad monster. Woo-woo. Iris hugged Govi, trembling violently all over, crying intermittently, sounding heartbreaking. This directly aroused Govi's sympathy and desire for protection. It's okay, that monster has already been eliminated by us. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Govi hugged the slender body of Iris, pretending to tremble, and gently stroked her hair again and again. Her voice was gentle and powerful, like a calming pill with a reassuring power. This warm and harmonious scene made Inuyasha's hair stand on end beside him. Are you Govi? Inuyasha looked at Govi, who was very gentle towards Iris, and twitched his lips. Can't this woman be possessed by any monster like that city lord? She doesn't usually treat herself this way, does she? Recalling in my mind the occasional ferocity she had when I was with Govi in the past, Inuyasha seemed to have seen something dirty. Her thin lips pursed into a straight line, and her handsome face was filled with disgust and disbelief. Govi's hand calmed Iris, and her face turned black with a swish. Inuyasha felt uneasy and unconsciously moved his foot towards the direction of the door. Sit down for me. Sure enough. After a loud bang, Inuyasha struggled to lift his head from the floor, his face even darker than the bottom of the pot. Sure enough, she's still that hot-tempered and unreasonable woman. Iris felt a sense of relief in her heart, and Govi indirectly vented a grudge against her. But on his face, he looked like a frightened deer, huddled in Govi's arms for a moment, his eyes wet, filled with nervousness and fear. As if startled by this sudden movement, she grabbed onto Govi's chest and shook as she lifted her head, looking at Inuyasha embedded in the floor, knowingly asking. Is he also a monster? Govi felt the trembling body of the iris in her arms and her fearful emotions, as if she had thought of something, and quickly spoke up, "Don't be afraid of that guy, although he has a hot temper, doesn't know how to be considerate, and is still an arrogant person. But in short, he is not a bad monster, and it was because of him that everyone was saved just now." Iris lifted its wet eyes and its gaze quickly skimmed over Inuyasha's face, its nose twitching, but his appearance is so scary. Govi's heart trembled as she looked at the iris tightly hugging her, with moist eyes. Surprised by the beauty of the iris, there was also a hint of pity in my heart. The thought of Iris being caught by the 9 toads inside the castle and almost dying as a result made her tone even softer. "Don't be afraid, he won't hurt us. If you don't believe him, you see." Govi skillfully reached out and pinched Inuyasha's ear, with a satisfied smile on her face. Who knows if Govi is trying to prove that showing Iris Inuyasha is not a bad person, or simply trying to satisfy her desire to pinch Inuyasha's ears. Who knows this? Perhaps each has its own half. Inuyasha's ear tips immediately turned crimson, and her face took an unnatural step back. "Govi. You guy." Ignoring Inuyasha's dark face and scorching ears, Govi still spoke to Iris, trying to divert her attention and help her escape from the shadow of the 9 toads. "Where are your parents? Shall we send you home? Hey, don't be presumptuous and do anything unnecessary. I didn't say I wanted to take her home with you." Govi didn't seem to hear Inuyasha's complaint. "What's the matter?" Upon hearing Govi's series of questions, Iris blinked in confusion because she couldn't answer them at all. Family members. How could she possibly have family? Govi looked at the iris with a bewildered expression and suddenly realized that in this warring states period, not everyone could have a happy and warm family. Thinking it might have hit the pain spot of the iris, he quickly changed the topic again and said, "My name is Govi, and you?" But in fact, she and Iris are not on the same channel at all. When Govi asked for her name, the only surviving iris flower in the cave that had awakened flashed through Iris's mind, slowly opening its mouth. "Iris, my name is Iris. Your name sounds so nice, just like you, it's very beautiful." Govi's bright smile shook Iris's eyes, and she was a bit stunned at that moment. "I don't know if I have any family. Before I was caught here, I had amnesia. Perhaps they had already been eaten by monsters. Even if they hadn't been eaten by monsters, they might have died on the battlefield." Iris lowered its head, the expression on its face making it hard to see, but the mixed sadness in its words was heartbreaking. "This acting is so amazing that I can't help but want to clap my hands and cheer." In this chaotic warring states period, not only were people engaged in endless battles for survival and their inner desires, but also monsters. And Iris's words are not entirely false, she doesn't have any previous memories. There is a mixture of truth and falsehood, and Govi naturally did not suspect her. "Actually, I wasn't forcibly arrested. I was intentionally caught in this castle because I heard that the lord of this castle was possessed by a monster, and I had some spiritual power. I was wondering if I could save those captured girls, but..." Chapter 7. Are you saying that Kikyu died? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before Iris could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Inuyasha sitting on the ground with broken iron teeth in her arms. "I just didn't expect to be so weak, did I? Inuyasha." Govi quickly called out to Inuyasha, but Inuyasha was abnormal, with a solemn expression and amber-clear eyes filled with seriousness. "If you think that relying on your pitifully weak spiritual power can save others, I advise you to wake up early." At this moment, Inuyasha seemed to think of Kikyu and the unfortunate witch who had been fighting all her life to protect the four-soul jade. Perhaps in his eyes, this newly rescued girl looked very similar to Kikyu in some places, which is why he went against the norm and said these hurtful words. The words are indeed hurtful, but the warning effect is directly exhausted. Iris sneered in her heart, she didn't feel weak. However, Inuyasha's words sparked her interest in him. This statement may seem to be belittling Iris and urging her not to do anything to save the lives of others, but in reality, it is asking her to stay safe and live well in this cannibalistic era. Coincidentally, she has no interest in the things that carry the lives of others and make her life great and difficult. The reason for fabricating such a lie is simply to make the reason why one appears here sound more reasonable. She just wanted to figure out why only by getting close to Inuyasha and Govi could she trigger those subtitles that predicted the future. Besides, only getting close to them can loosen her dusty memories a bit. It's just for these reasons. But in acting, we still need to do the whole set. Iris kept spinning with tears of grievance in her eyes, and her stubbornly clenched fists seemed to vent her shame. Inuyasha silently turned his gaze away upon seeing this and left the room at some point. He stood alone at the door, seemingly lost in some distant memories. Govi looked at Inuyasha's somewhat desolate figure, opened her mouth, and finally swallowed the words that came to her mouth. After the incident with the 9 toads came to an end, Iris followed Govi for the reason of nowhere to go, and the kind Govi naturally wouldn't leave her in a place unfamiliar to him. So, why would she be with us? Inuyasha stood straight on the back seat of Govi's bicycle, holding his broken iron teeth in his arms, his tone seeming somewhat dissatisfied. The iris curled its lips. Here we go again, this arrogant and half-demon who speaks deceitfully. Although they had been guarding their surroundings all the way, carefully protecting the two of them, their words were so unreasonable that they couldn't be forgiven. It's really piercing. Alright, Inuyasha. Iris has lost her memory and can't even remember where she came from. It's very dangerous for her to be alone. And you see, Iris also has spiritual power. Maybe she can help us find the fragments of the 4-soul jade together. Govi squeezed her watery eyes towards the iris, which understood and nodded eagerly like pounding garlic. I will definitely work hard to become stronger and won't hold you back, so let me go with you. Iris has said so, Inuyasha, you can say 2 less words. Inuyasha turned her head and snorted lightly. At first, Govi always felt that Inuyasha was targeting Iris and had some aversion towards her. But as we got along, the inexplicable targeting and rejection seemed to fade away quite a bit. At this moment, Govi only thought it was because they were not familiar with each other, little did he know that there was a deeper connection between them. The 3 of them made a fuss all the way back to Maple Grandma's village. Not far away, they saw Maple Grandma standing above the stone steps. Govi waved his hand towards Grandma Fong, with a smile on his face. From modern times to the Warring States period, besides Inuyasha, the person she trusts and relies on the most is Maple Grandma. Grandma Fong, we're back. Grandma Fong also smiled and nodded, it's Govi and Inuyasha. When her gaze touched the iris next to Govi, Maple Grandma frowned, making the grooves on her face appear deeper. The girl who came back with Govi seems a bit familiar. At this moment, there is still some distance from Maple's wooden house, and Inuyasha has already jumped onto a tree next to Maple's house with his strong jumping force in 3, 5, and 2 jumps. That's Grandma Fong, the highly respected witch in the village, said Gove as she pushed her bicycle to introduce Iris. However, Iris's thoughts had already drifted far away, completely ignoring Govi's words. Isn't that one-eyed old woman the one she recently met buried in the soil? Did she not actually be taken away by the wild wolf? This life is really tough enough. As they spoke, the 2 had already arrived at Grandma Feng's side. Govi, how did you and Inuyasha find the fragments of the 4-soul jade this time? Did you get hurt? Grandma Feng looked up and down at Go-Wei, and only breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that she was okay. However, Yu Guang kept looking at the iris. Govi helped Maple Granny back into the small wooden house and told her about the experience of searching for the 4-soul jade. Inuyasha walked into the cabin at some point, looking disdainful. The miscellaneous monsters like the 99 toad, are still pitiful even if they have the jade fragment of the 4 souls. As he spoke, Inuyasha's gaze shifted to Iris, as if he had pointed something. Iris seemed to be frightened by Inuyasha and seemingly unintentionally moved towards Govi. Iris looked timid and hesitant on its face, but in its heart, it looked up at Inuyasha. I didn't expect this kid's intuition to be so accurate. He looked carefree and nervous, but he always held a slight guard against her. Is this a dog's unique sense of smell? Or is it a sensitive perception of danger? Miss, it seems that I have seen you somewhere before. Maple's grandmother's voice broke the brief silence. Inuyasha's thumb secretly pressed against the scabbard of the iron broken tooth, which could pop out at any time and swing towards the iris. But Iris still looked as usual and politely smiled at Maple Grandma. Yes, we have met before. You may not remember, it was in the forest. At that time, you were buried in the soil and seemed to have difficulty breathing. So I helped you sweep away the dead branches covering your face. When hearing this passage, Inuyasha was visibly embarrassed. Because he remembered that it was him who buried Maple Grandma in the soil, and in the end, he kindly covered her face with a layer of dead branches. Oh, it's you. At that time, I mistook you for my deceased sister. I'm really sorry. Grandma Feng's laughter dissolved the awkward atmosphere, but the iris almost instantly changed color. Are you saying that Kikyu is dead? Chapter 8. Why betray me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just as the oppressive feeling of that day descended again. Maple Grandma didn't even know why she felt a slight chill from a timid and cowardly-looking little girl. Iris immediately realized her mistake and quickly put on an incredulous and sorrowful expression. Sorry, I just lost my composure. I have heard many stories about Miss Kikyu before and have always admired her. I didn't expect her to. Kikyu has been dead for 50 years. Inuyasha interrupted Iris's words and pulled up Govi, instinctively protecting her behind him with a dangerous light in his eyes. What is your purpose in approaching us? Inuyasha. Govi looked at the iris still sitting in place, then at the resolute side face of Inuyasha blocking in front of her, and her heart began to beat faster. Wrong. Iris has a headache. How did the situation suddenly turn out like this? After observing Inuyasha for such a long time, I didn't notice that he had such a brain capacity. By relying on clues, I suspected that he was on her head. She just made a small mistake in the matter of Kikyu, mistakenly thinking she was still alive. But if she's not by their side, how should she trigger those subtitles that can predict the future? Also, it seems that they all have a close relationship with the deceased Kikyo. These days, she realized that her perception of Govi was not even as strong as the name of Kikyu. A voice deep within her told herself that in order to know her background and unlock her dusty memories, the only way was to approach Inuyasha and the others. But now, her plan seems to have fallen through. How to solve the current dilemma? How about kill them all? Iris licked her slightly dry lower lip, and a cold smile froze at the corner of her lips. As she looked up and met Inuyasha's gaze, Inuyasha had no hesitation in pulling out his broken iron teeth from his waist, and the blade had already undergone a transformation. It looks like it can be mercilessly chopped towards the iris at any time. Isn't it true that most people with strong spiritual power can have a long lifespan? How did Miss Kikyu pass away? Long lifespan. But even with powerful spiritual power, Kikyu died at the most beautiful age. Inuyasha clenched his hand with his broken iron teeth and a strange look flashed through his eyes, followed by a cold sneer, shit, who knows? Perhaps she had too much monster blood on her body, and finally received retribution and died tragically. Essentially, she was just a weak and pitiful human. After listening to Inuyasha's words, Grandma Feng's expression also looked a bit strange. Her cloudy old eyes showed disbelief, but soon returned to normal. Inuyasha, put away your broken iron teeth. She's right, some people with powerful spiritual power can indeed have a long lifespan, but Kikyu's sister is not. Grandma Feng looked at Inuyasha. Inuyasha still retains the spirited and unrestrained appearance of 50 years ago, but he is already in his old age. Platycodon has long been transformed into a handful of yellow soil, no longer in the human world. Finally, Grandma Foam looked out the door and fell into memories. Before Kikyu's death, when Maple was still young, a powerful black witch once cursed Kikyu maliciously. If it weren't for that black witch, if it weren't for Inuyasha, Kikyu should still be alive. Perhaps in old age, after experiencing the vicissitudes of the world and seeing through many things, Foam Laolau's obsession with hatred is not as deep. Kikyu's untimely death also smoothed out her resentment towards Inuyasha over a long period of time. Perhaps this is fate. She just can't figure out why the two people who love each other so much in front of 50 would end up in a miserable ending. One was sealed for 50 years, while the other passed away with resentment and ended badly. I know I've been following you all along and causing you a lot of trouble. It's normal for you to suspect me of approaching you with a purpose, but if you want to say the purpose, I really want to become as powerful as Miss Kikyu and protect myself as a precious person. Iris is very good at observing words and expressions, and in an instant, it understood that Platycodon is a pain point that their group cannot mention. That's why she deliberately said such a thing. She is gambling. Fortunately, she won and also made the right bet. How could she possibly lose? Nowadays, Inuyasha and Govi are no match for her. If she wants to kill them, it would be as easy as pie. Iris's gaze fell on Govi, who was guarded behind by Inuyasha. If she really wants to kill everyone here, she really can't bear it. Govi is like the sun she first sees after waking up, warm and bright. At the very least, she doesn't want to kill this girl who is as warm as the sun at the moment. In the end, this controversy came to an end. Inuyasha withdrew his broken iron teeth from the scabbard, but turned around and left the cabin like he had lost his soul. What does he remember at this moment? Is it the powerful witch who promised to spend the rest of her life with him 50 years ago? Thinking of this, the cold, beautiful and nostalgic face of Kikyu came to mind. Inuyasha gritted his teeth and punched the ancient wood in the sky like a vent, but his eyes were shattered and empty. Why betray me? Leaves scattered all over Inuyasha's body, and he looked up at the scorching sun, his eyes becoming sour without realizing it. Only he could hear the deep voice in his throat clearly. Why betray me? Kikyu. The suspicious incident came to an end, and Iris stayed in Maple Grandma's cabin, while Inuyasha and Govi still frequently went out to search for fragments of the four-souled jade. Originally, Iris also wanted to go with them, but now is not the time. She has just experienced a crisis of trust, so it's better not to rush for success first, so as not to lose out. During the days in the village, Iris learned archery from Maple Grandma every day. Externally, she said she wanted to quickly become stronger and could help Inuyasha and Govi, but in reality, she didn't even need to learn those basic things. Strangely enough, when she picked up the bow and arrow, it seemed as if she had already used it thousands of times. With just inexplicable muscle memory, one can skillfully open a bow, then shoot an arrow, and ultimately hit the bullseye. A series of actions flow smoothly without any stagnation or unfamiliarity. Originally, as long as she relied on her demonic power, she could easily shoot arrows with strong power, but she couldn't let any clues slip through. So I could only stumble and mobilize the weak spiritual power inside my body. Who understands how heartbreaking it is to pretend to be a hardworking and ambitious little weak chicken, despite being absurdly strong, to make others lower their guard? Didn't Chapter 9 leave you a few more? What are you calling out for? You are listening at novelfull.audio. On that day, Iris was lying on the lawn, holding a dogtail grass in its mouth, pondering how to search for the four-souled jade fragments with Inuyasha and the others without leaving a trace. Actually, the most important thing is not to search for the fragments of the four-souled jade, but to travel with them. Because only by being with them, those subtitles that predict the future that only she can see will be triggered. Just as she was looking for a way to deepen Inuyasha's trust in her, a sudden thunderbolt came from the sky. Iris opened its eyes and looked into the sky, where two monsters were riding on a thundercloud. Sparks and lightning flashed along the way, fearing that others might not notice them as two second-class people. That unusual thunder, there's no need to think it must have come from them, right? Iris spat out the dog-tail grass in its mouth, rested its hands behind its head, and squinted its eyes. Hey, those two rhinoceroses up there. That should be a rhinoceros, right? What do you care about him? Can you be quiet? The Thunder Beast brothers on the Thunder Cloud, Phaeton and Mantion, looked at the iris lying on the lawn with its legs crossed and a contented expression on its face. The originally angry expression suddenly changed. Brother Phaeton. When the bald Thunder Beast saw the iris, it suddenly remembered a popular saying. As long as the cute girl is crushed into foam, then boiled into medicinal juice and applied to his head, he can grow a head of shiny black hair. Just like his handsome flying brother. The sky stretched out its short hand and touched its bald head, with even more hopeful light in its eyes. How could Phaeton not know what his younger brother was thinking? Do you need my help? Phaeton grinned with a cruel and bloodthirsty smile. Mantion quickly shook his head and waved his hand, looking nervous. No need, Brother Phaeton, I can do it. Come back as soon as you finish hunting. Phaeton stepped on the wind and fire wheel and glanced sideways at the iris lying on the lawn, riding away in the wind. That woman is pretty good, but since everyone likes her, let him have it. Who makes him a good brother? After Phaeton left, the whole sky finally breathed a sigh of relief, and the heart in his throat was firmly placed back in his chest. He is really afraid of Phaeton brother and him snatching this woman. If this woman is taken away, then he won't be able to make birth potions. If you can't make hair potions, you won't be able to grow hair anymore. That's really terrifying. The whole sky was startled by his own thoughts, and he quickly took out the comb he carried with him and carefully combed the few shaky hairs on his head. At this moment, there are still dozens of hairs on his head. But later, that's not necessarily the case. Iris watched as she carefully combed her few strands of hair over the sky, with a playful smile on her lips. How about that hair monster give him a head of hair? Oh, by the way. That hair monster seems to have been accidentally crushed by her. Looking at the face of the iris all over the sky, I became increasingly satisfied. Such a lovely girl can definitely make the most perfect hair growth potion. Hair growth potion. Iris frowned. Did she hear it right? Is that bald rhinoceros going to turn her into a potion and apply it to his bald forehead? It's really not beautiful, but what I think is quite beautiful. The sky opened its mouth wide, revealing rugged teeth and a particularly cheerful smile. The thundercloud under his feet was about to reach out and retrieve the iris. Come with me, my hair growth agent. Stretching out his short hand all over the sky, he was about to pull the iris onto his thundercloud. But just a stone's throw away from the iris, there seemed to be an invisible barrier blocking him. He saw the hair growth agent right beside him, but he couldn't touch it. In a fit of anger, his chest bulging rapidly, and a golden lightning wave was condensing in his open mouth. He is going to use lightning waves to break down the barrier in front of him. Even if the iris behind the barrier is blasted into minced meat, it doesn't matter. Iris saw the sky full of intentions and finally sat up from the grass. She just extended her slender index finger and lightly flicked the thundercloud that covered the soles of her feet, and that thundercloud instantly dissipated without a trace. The sky, which had lost its support under his feet, stumbled and fell to the ground, while the lightning wave in his mouth also reversed direction and was about to shoot out towards the village. This won't work. Iris quickly reached out and closed the wide-open mouth of the sky, then squeezed it tightly. If you ruin the village, where should I wait for them? The eyes were full of confusion, rolling around aimlessly, and soon their eyes were covered in red blood. This is because the lightning wave in the mouth has already accumulated its strength, but there is no way to find the outlet. If the force of the lightning wave is not relieved again, his chest will explode. And Iris also realized this. This bald rhinoceros has such a large body, if it explodes, then this area must be all his minced meat. Just thinking about it makes me sick. Moreover, she didn't want to make such a big fuss and cause unnecessary trouble. You don't want to die, do you? I heard nodding all over the sky, like pounding garlic. Her small eyes were filled with tears, and her face was almost turning green. Where else is there in the sky now to catch the iris and boil it back to make a hair growth agent? Why hasn't he heard of such a powerful human before? If I had heard of him, how dare he hunt in this area? Ah! Iris nodded thoughtfully and gradually relaxed her grip on the hand that covered the sky's mouth. Oh no! The sky was filled with lingering palpitations, tears streaming down his face, thinking that he finally didn't need to explode, but the next second, a big mouth completely knocked him out. What's going on? His mouth was completely open towards the sky, and a wild demonic force shot out from his mouth towards the sky, exploding into a beautiful fireworks display. Bang! This sound attracted the attention of countless people. The villagers who were working in the fields raised their heads one after another. Where's the war going again? Give us a break, we don't even have enough food to eat, will we go to war again? Look, what's that? Someone pointed at the place where the sky was filled with demonic power exploding, looking obsessed. How beautiful! That's from the back mountain, isn't it? Back mountain. Isn't that the place where Iris practices archery? Maple Granny recognized at a glance that it was a thriving demonic force, and immediately summoned the strong men from the village with weapons to rush towards the direction of the back mountain. At this moment, Iris was clapping her hands with satisfaction, with sparse hair scattered around her feet. The sky was filled with an incredulous expression as he raised his hand and touched his head, which was about to catch fire but still bare. His eyes were completely silent. It's gone. It's gone. My hair. Iris lifted its feet on the sky-filled face, impatiently digging out its ears from above. Didn't I leave a few for you? What did I shout for? Chapter 10. TSK, Spare Your Dog's Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But the whole sky seemed to lose its consciousness, turning a deaf ear to the words of the iris. I'm going to eat you. The sky gradually regained some brightness in its eyes, struggling to gain freedom from the feet of the iris. But at this moment, he was like a stranded pufferfish, bouncing back and forth in place, unable to shake off the slender ankles of the iris. I want Brother Man Tion to kill you. Upon hearing the words, Iris smiled instead of getting angry and tapped her head with her toes, her tone light and ethereal. Are you talking about the miscellaneous monster with long hair just now? The sky suddenly stopped fluttering, as the iris looked down at him with a bloodthirsty smile on its face, cold and cruel. This strong sense of oppression cannot even be achieved by Brother Man Tion. If he really calls the sky, wouldn't he buy one get one free? Just as Iris was thinking about how to deal with the bald rhinoceros under her feet, a series of calls and messy footsteps came into her ears. Iris. Miss Iris, are you here? Miss Iris. The footsteps are approaching, and it won't be long before the people in the village find this place. If the people in the village see her easily stomping on a monster, wouldn't the previous efforts of hibernation be in vain? Tisk, spare your dog's life. A red light flowed from the iris's eyes, and she stared into the sky before speaking hastily, forget everything that happened here, then go. The eyes in the sky suddenly lost their luster, like a layer of fog, stunned and slow to move. Iris looked at the rhinoceros in front of her, which had been unable to recover for a long time and was moving slowly. It was stumbling with its short legs, spinning aimlessly in place, and kicked him directly in the back. Bang, bang, bang. The sky rolled down the mountain slope as instructed by the iris, and soon disappeared without a trace. Just say go and really go, but there's no need to be so diligent and responsible. And Iris also looked around, picked up the quiver, and disappeared in place with a flash. Maple Lao Lao led the strong men in the village to arrive one step later. Looking around empty, Maple Lao Lao's heart sank with a thud. Isn't the iris already eaten by the monster? Seeing the highly respected witch grandmother in the village looking disheartened, the villagers quickly supported her shaky body. Grandma Fong, let's go find Miss Iris. Don't worry. Maybe she didn't practice here today. Yes, Maple Grandma, please go back and rest first. We will definitely find Miss Iris. Grandma Fong clenched the bow and arrow in her hand, her mind filled with the figure of Kikyu from 50 years ago. During these days spent with Iris, she would always vaguely see it as a long-gone Kikyo, even though they had nothing in common. 50 years ago, the pain of losing the platycodon plant once again climbed up Maple Grandma's heart like a maggot attached to the bones. Grandma Fong felt as if the air around her began to thin out, and her face gradually turned pale. Even the voices of the villagers in her ears began to lose their authenticity. Maple Grandma. A timid young girl's voice shattered the anxious atmosphere, and the iris poked its head out from behind a tree. Iris. Iris tightly held the bow and arrow in her hand to her chest, carefully moving her body out from behind the thick tree that the three of them were embracing. Just now there was a very scary monster here, and I hid behind a tree and never dared to come out. After speaking, she trembled and reached out her finger to kick the place she had just kicked into the sky. On the small slope, a huge indentation spread into the paddy field, and it is not difficult to infer from this trace that a massive monster rolled down not long ago. The sky full of inexplicable blame expressed that he was really unjustified, even more so than Do-e. When this female demon stepped on his face just now, it wasn't the harmless face of this little lamb. Seeing that the iris was safe and sound, everyone finally felt relieved. Maple Grandma was worried about another monster coming here, so she asked Iris to interrupt her cultivation and return to the village early. The level of Iris's facial transformation is getting higher and higher, and there is no pressure to switch between Little White Rabbit and Big Demon in seconds at any time. Finally, I managed to stay up until evening, when I was about to rest when one subtitle after another floated from the sky. Iris's eyes lit up. They're back. Chibao is so pitiful, he's the only one left. Damn it, all over the sky, he killed Chibao's father. He even peeled off his fox fur. Inuyasha. I'll kill your brother, you go kill my brother, do you really have such a brotherly relationship? Several characters that Iris doesn't know appeared in the flowing subtitles this time. 7 treasures. Sha Xingwan. As the barrage approached, a crisp, sit down echoed through the sky. Iris twitched at the corner of its eye. It's really hard to see the person. Let's hear their voice first. Iris, we're back. Govi pushed her bicycle and waved at Iris. Iris immediately blushed at the sight and ran towards Govi with a worried face. Govi, you're not injured, are you? Iris took Govi's hand and carefully examined her whole body. Seeing that she was safe and sound, she breathed a sigh of relief, but in the afterglow, she caught a glimpse of a little fox on the back seat of the bicycle. What a cute little fox, can I touch it? Chibao clasped his arms in both hands and stared at the iris with a pair of translucent green eyes, seemingly stunned. Seeing the beautiful girl who was so heartbreaking that she couldn't help but miss a beat, she timidly reached out her hand to herself. Chibao, with red ears, jumped onto Govi's shoulder and also extended her hand. My name is Chibao. Hello Chibao, I am Iris. Iris smiled and held on to Chibao's small hand, creating a joyful atmosphere among the three. Inuyasha, who was not far away, lifted his head from the ground and threw away the mud all over his face with a gloomy expression, enveloping himself in the low pressure. Click, click. Inuyasha's knuckles clattered and he murmured the name of the 7 treasures in his mouth. Chibao, you little boy. After hearing Inuyasha's cry, Chibao, with his back facing Inuyasha, broke out in cold sweat and his hair stood up like a lightning strike. Chibao quickly jumped into Govi's arms, his mouth twitching and he said, "Govi, Inuyasha bullied me." Govi turned her head to look at Inuyasha with a swoop. Inuyasha was startled and shrank her neck. Inuyasha. Hey, go away, it's clearly the kid from Chibao. Before she could finish speaking, Govi put Chibao into Iris's arms and pushed her bicycle to leave first. Seeing Govi's departure, Inuyasha breathed a sigh of relief and pressed his fingertips as if he was about to take Chibao out of Iris's arms and beat him up. Those two words will only be late, but they will never be absent. Sit down. The fear on Chibao's small face disappeared without a trace in an instant, and he made a face at Inuyasha, who was deeply trapped in the ground. Slightly.